Hello, my name is Prakash and welcome to the part 9 video tutorial for the series where we are using a Windows 10 laptop to build a HyperV test lab and then set up SQL Server 2019 multi-subnet always on setup. In this particular tutorial, we'll talk about how do we create 4 different VMs. 3 of them will be the database servers and 1 will be the app servers. Out of those 3 servers, 2 will be in one data center, and we'll simulate the scenario where different subnet will be there for the third one, so that when one data center went down, we still have the availability. So let's get going. So far we have covered the overall architecture. We did a complete failover testing for always on. Once the setup is done, how the end product looks like, and you'll be able to basically try out 6 different scenarios in terms of when the failover happens and what you need to do to recover from the failover. Then we set up the laptop to boot with Windows 10 VHD, then configured HyperV, installed parent virtual hard disk with Windows Server 2019 in it, set up multiple subnet, and added a virtual router which will allow any of these networks to talk to each other and access the internet, even though that network is not having an internet. Finally, in the last session, we covered how to configure domain controller. Now we have all the pieces of the puzzle in place, so it's time to get started. Before we continue, let's discuss what we'll be doing. We'll be creating a first node, DB1. We'll set it as LAN 10. We'll create DB2, again the same LAN. On DB3, we'll be using a LAN 20, so that's a different subnet. And then finally, we'll create an app VM, which we'll be using to test the always on availability. So my name is Prakash Heda. I'm an MCDBA. I work as a senior manager in SSNC. I also do part-time consultancy for performance tuning. I have a blog, sqlfeatures.com, where you can find all the articles available with it. Please connect me with LinkedIn, as well as connect me on Twitter if you have any questions regarding the video. Okay, so let's continue with creating the VMs. First, a couple of modifications. When you start your Hyper-V manager, you can see both these VMs. Let's validate that their checkpoint is disabled, because we don't want to create any checkpoints in this testing. Also, check automatic start operation is set to automatically start if it was running, because we want it to be running. You can technically pick always start virtual machine automatically, and that's fine too. Here we have turned the virtual machine. I would rather pick shut down the guest. It's more reliable. So click OK. Do the same thing on the router side. Disable checkpoints. Always start and shut down. Alright, so we're all set. Let's bring them up. So let's open PowerShell ISE in administrator mode. Click open. Go to scripts. You can see part 9 scripts are available. Open create HyperV VM. To get the scripts, you have to go to just search for it. You can find the link on the blog as well. Click on that and test HyperV lab. When you go to the scripts, you can see the part 9. That's what you want to capture at this point. And here are the scripts. So as usual, this first step, you're aware what it does. We are creating a first VM with DB1, then we'll create 2, and I'll make it 3. And then finally, we'll create an app node. We made one logic that for the DB3, we want to use LAN 20, otherwise just use LAN 10. So we'll do that. Now we are creating the host name with the VM name as usual. So this command you are very well aware. In the last tutorial video, we did go through it. And we are unattended, putting our unattended code, putting the administrator password as well as the VM name. Quickly, it's coming from here. and the password is getting replaced from these variables which we are storing it. Then we dismount, we run the command new VM, set the commands to set automatic checkpoints, start and stop actions, start sleep, and then we start the VM. So for the first one, I will still go it one by one. So let's update the variable in the memory. Don't select exit, otherwise your script will end. You have to reload it and select this so we can see it's picking, creating a new VHD. Once we are done, we're gonna update the unattended file there and we dismount the HD. Now let's create the VM. As you can see, VM name and switch name is coming from here, which we populated here. Processor, only one processor we are attaching and 4 gig of memory we are attaching. Our goal is to finish this exercise in about 16 gig of RAM, so that should be good enough. And startup MB is 2 GB, so that should help. So let's click F8. That did it. Now some basic commands, just run them. Okay, so if you have noticed, I have created the SQL setup.iso, which we prepared in the first video. So make sure to go and see how to create this. And if you're following the tutorial, this file would be available in its place. So you should be able to just refer it to load it. Now, let's start the VM and connect. It will take a couple of minutes for this VM to come up. Technically, there is no need to enter anything. This will be a new VM with the name we provided DB1. Now to run the second one, all I am making a change is set it to as I said, if you just F5, that's what will happen. So just do a click, save it and select and run it. So DB2 is now getting created. Meanwhile, DB1 is setting up and now DB2 is also started. So we have 2 VMs getting created. We're running an SSD so we can afford. Now let's create the third one, the same method. Okay, so 2 are running and we started with the third one. While this is happening, let's go ahead and start the fourth one as well. And remember, this one we created with the subnet LAN 20, so that should work. Now the F1. And as you can see, fourth VM is also getting created. Let's give it some time. We'll be back in about 5 minutes by the time this should be up. Okay, I'm back, and as you can see, all 4 VMs are ready. Good. So basic thing, one time you have to do this. So at this point, we don't need to connect to this VM because we are doing everything using the remote commands to set it up. So click connect just so that the VM is set up to be in full screen. Then close it. Now let's open the first DB1. Now we are configuring the DB server. We are putting a name. We're checking what's the network adapter connected to that VM, and as you can see, there is one LAN 10 switch is connected to it. So we want to do a PS session connection, an RM connection to connect to it. Check network adapter, and we want to change the switch name to 10. Similar steps we did for, and we were configuring the virtual router and the domain controller. So same steps, you're aware of it. On selection. So we know that network address is 5. We want to change Ethernet to LAN 10, and these next 4 lines will do that. And this is the updated one, but the IP is still not the 10, so we'll be using this command to set the IP address. We set the DNS gateway. This is our virtual router gateway 10.10.10.1, and DNS address coming from domain server 10.10.10.do, and this VM is getting an IP of 10.10.10.11. So let's run. So this, we have set this up. Let's validate. and we can see that 10, 10, 10, 11 is visible. Okay, now one thing I don't like is that, okay, so now the second entry is gone, the entry which we saw before. So it took some time for it to get away. So now it looks good. We have only one IP, proper what we wanted. So let's run basic commands, validate the host name. We are on 10.10.10 network because of the router, the google.com which should be working, and we do have internet access as we expected. Let's check SQL features we can access. Yes, domain controller is accessible. The host name is also accessible for the domain controller. Let's check 10, 10 and 20. It can access the 20 networks. So 10, 10, that this is the virtual router. It's accessible, as well as the 20 network is also accessible. So at this point, from network point of view, our setup looks perfect. Let's validate SQL features. The domain exists, all the entries. So now let's add this VM to the domain. I'm just checking if it is connected. That will unjoin it. So we're good. We are using our super secret password and login, right? To do it, right? And once we add the computer, we want to restart the computer. So let's add the computer, right? Once the computer is added to the domain, it says after the reboot. So let's time for the reboot. As you can see, all these commands we are running on DB1. So that's how the connection looks like. So when I run reboot, it's going to restart this computer. Once this is up, we'll connect it back on DB1. Set up our session again. Technically everything is in the memory, so we can just use this to connect it. But remember last time we created the session with using the administrator account, because this VM was running locally. Now it's on domain controller, so we will set up again new connection using the domain controller user. So let me run. By now server might be up, so let's check. All right, so server is up. Let's validate server details. We can see server is on domain sqlfeatures.com. Perfect. The machine name is db1, so it configured as expected. We can check our credentials. We are connected to SQL Features HV admin. That's what we'll be using to do the installations. And now we'll restart the computer once again. Now this computer is basically ready to set up SQL Server installation. So let's do the DB2 now. Almost similar steps. I'm going to be doing it pretty quick this time. Once the session is connected, our command would be changed to showing the DB2. This is good. So let's connect and make sure that we are setting the network address. This time we are giving it the IP address 12, gateway and DNS is same. So let's run it together. So when you run it, you can see it's 10, 10, and 12, and as expected, just to validate network adapter, you can see the name is LAN 10. That's what we care. Then we'll do the basic test. All the what's the host name? DB2. Google Ping is working, so our network connection looks perfectly okay. This is the benefit of creating that parent virtual hard disk machine, because in that we kind of did the basic setup so that now we can create hundreds of VM if we want. It takes like less than a couple of minutes to create a new VM and no need to click any setting or configuration. So that's a pretty quick way to expedite our testing process. Okay, so on DB2, we can see the network is accessible. Unjoined, and we'll add the computer. I keep restart computer. I run usually once again, so it's rebooting it now. Once we're done with the restart computer, then we'll be connecting it again with SQL Features HV admin. So let's run that. And once connected, we want to validate our computer is connected to the domain, and we can see computer is connected, DB2 on SQL Features local, so we're good. validate our user account, SQL feature admin, good. Let's restart the computer and continue with preparing the DB node 3s. 3, let's select the server, create a connection. This is good. Now, important part is this connection. We are connecting it as LAN 20. This is a different subnet. And this is the key to the tutorial. This is multi-subnet configuration for always on. So this will give us that different subnet, which will do it. So let's validate. I want to make sure that, yeah, so VM name, we can see it's connected to LAN 20. And now we're going to configure getNet adapter. We are giving it 2020.20.11 as the IP address. As you can see, default gateway is 2020.21. This is also set up in our virtual router for the LAN 20, though our DNS address is same as the domain controller, no change there. Select, getting populated, wanted to see what's the network interface name, current switch name as well as new switch name would be, and it looks perfect. Interface is collected, Ethernet, LAN 20. Now let's disable the basic stuff, change the name, disable TCP IP6. After that, we'll be running, switch the IP address from 169 to 54. This is the default given by HyperV. We want to change it to 2020. So once it's done, let's run it, and we can see IP address is properly updated. Our computer seems like ready. Validate network adapter is LAN 20. Perfect. So TB3 is also set. Run these commands to validate. This different subnet, 20 subnet, can also access internet as well as SQL features and others. And you can see all the different networks are accessible. So our computer is all set to continue with the next step. We can see network, you can see SQL features domain, run the same computer and restart computer. This time I'm running it together with restart. So once it added to the computer, it will start the restart process. Once it come back, now we'll again connect back as a SQL features domain account so that you can see it's updated or not. Okay, we gave it a few seconds, almost 30 seconds. So I'm gonna try to connect, let's see. Alright, so we can see TB3 is connected to SQL features local, looks perfect. Gonna say who am I? We are running a SQL feature admin and computer is restarted, so we're good. Let's close it. DB3 is configured. The last one is the app node, so let's configure that. Connect to the server. So connection established, you can see EW19 app. GetNet adapter, we are configuring LAN 10 here. The IP address for the app server is 99. We are renaming net adapter, disabling IPv6. Assigning is the IP address. Let's run them together. Let's validate. There are times you'll find that two IPs saying the old IP is still visible while new IP is set. So give it a few seconds. Let's give it a try. Okay, so it looks good. Perfect. LAN 10, we set. Let's validate the connections to the different entries. SQL features, it can connect. Domain server, it can ping. Virtual router is working fine. Okay, so connections all look good. Let's check domain controller access. Perfect. Now let's add the machine to the domain controller and restart it. Okay, we gave it a few seconds. Let's try connecting it. So we are connected to the app server, as you can see here. Now let's validate. System is on, SQL features, app server, perfect. Physical memory, you can see 2 gig is visible, and HV admin. Perfect. So in this case, we are adding Windows feature, name failover clustering, and include management tools. So yes, that is something we need to install here. We installed Windows features, we created a directory. Now let's install SSMS in it. So this D drive is already mounted as an ISO we created in the D drive, and you can see the SQL features was created here. So if I mount it, we can see it as a drive, and we can see all our files and binaries are here, what we created on video tutorial 3. So make sure if you don't have these ready, then go get it there. So once done, let's run the command. We modified, I believe this should work. Alright, so SSMS setup started. It's all happening on the remote. We are not even connected to any of the VMs. The installation will take about 10 to 20 minutes. You can actually RDP to the system and see the setup is running, and let's validate it. Running it on app server, let's connect. That should be admin. Remember, this is running with just one CPU and 2 GB of RAM, so obviously it will be slow. But that's okay. We are working on only 16 GB of RAM and 8 core CPU. So 4 of these cores are going into the 4 VMs we created. 2 cores are going into router as well as the domain controller. That's a pretty good setup to have working on a laptop where you can create 6 VMs just with 128 GB of space. This is also one of the reasons I always suggest that run the commands through command line as a remote session, because that doesn't take much resources, no RDP resources, no memory resources. Things are faster that way. This is the first time we are connecting to a VM, so first time logging in, so it's creating profile and all that, so it will take some time. And now we can see SQL Server Management Studio installation is going on. While this is running, let's configure the failover clustering on the other 3 nodes as well. So since this is connected to the remote connection, we can't do it here. Let's create new connection. Open DB1, go to the end. Let's add Windows feature, but first we need to create a connection. Connection established, so we're going to run these 3 commands. This will install failover clustering component on the DB server. I'm going to copy these 2 lines. We're going to work some parallel stuff, so create a one more new connection. We cover DB1, so we're going to do DB2 and DB3 as well. Connect to DB2. Let's make sure to set up a connection here, and then we'll run this 3 command. Took some time. Now it's connect to DB2, so let's execute this part. One more session connecting to DB3. Doing exactly the same step, and as I said, connect it first and then run it. Run selection, make sure you're connected first. Okay, connected on DB3. We run the command, so this will be done, so we should be good. Just closing the window for now. Let's go to the other one. This is good. Let's close the window as well. So DB1, it's going on. Keep it going. Let's check our connections. So we have one Windows connection for the app server. Let's validate. SSMS is installed. This is something you can close. And I don't see SSMS installed here, so which means it's good. I'm going to close it. and then we'll set up a restart computer. This time we have to do force, as we just have another session connected. Okay, that would be good. App server is now all set. Now for the other 3 connections are working. Once it will take another few minutes to complete, and once this is done, we are done with this exercise. So this concluded for the session today. We created 4 different VMs, 3 DB VMs, 1 application VMs. One of the VM is running on the different network, so that we'll be able to create multi-subnet cluster and multi-subnet always on. Thanks for watching the video. If you